Hey there, today I'm going to be testing the Intel Arc A380 in Palworld. On screen you can see the specifications like the CPU, RAM, hard drive, game drive, and also the graphics card, as well as all the specifications for it as well. I am using the latest drivers for this graphics card as of January 1st, 2024. Without further ado, let's get into the game. Starting off, I am at 1440p on the very low settings, so basically 2K resolution. Either way, on very low settings, the game got 24 frames per second on average with a 1% low of 14. And in some scenarios, like around this building here, the average frame rate actually does dip below 20 regularly, which is rather disappointing, but then again, this isn't exactly that powerful either. This is about as fast as a GTX 1050 when the drivers are actually working properly. Next up is 1080p on the very low settings, and at 1080p on the very low settings, the game was getting 33 frames per second on average with a 1% low of 19. So still not very good, especially since this is the very low settings. I expected better. I expected more like 60 from this, or 55 maybe, but nope, only around 33, which is, I guess it's alright. It's not a shooter game or something, but it's still not ideal. Also, I need to add, before I recorded this benchmark, I was going over and live streaming, and when I live stream, I usually use something besides the capture card. Instead of using the capture card, I use the actual graphics card to record the live stream, and that would go over and impact the frame rate. And when I was live streaming, instead of getting around 33 frames per second on average, I was getting about 25, often dipping into the teens. It was actually relatively playable. I played for like 4 hours this morning and had no issue with the frame rate, at least to me, but I know a lot of people probably would have a bad time with less than 30 frames per second on average. 900p on the very low settings was a little bit better. It wasn't a 30 plus FPS experience, but the average frame rate at least came out to 38, though it still did drop into the 20s in the more intensive areas. Either way, at 900p I would say the performance is actually relatively good, and if you do want a 30 plus FPS experience, I would just try to lock the frame rate to 30 and play at 900p in this situation on the very low settings, even if it doesn't actually look that good. Next, I kept the resolution to 900p, but instead of being on the very low settings, I upped it to low. And the game looks actually worse at the low settings. It has a bit more blur to it, and I don't know, it just looks worse at 900p on the low settings than it does at very low. The nice features like having grass is done extremely poorly, so very low just gets rid of grass completely and it looks better, I guess, I don't know. Either way, at the low settings, the game got 27 frames per second with a 1% low of 17. To be fair, how it's performing right now is how it was running at 1080p on the very low settings when I was recording with OBS when I was live streaming for the last 4 hours, but I can't really recommend this when you can easily go over and set it to very low settings and, well, get significantly better frame rate. I also tried the medium preset at 900p, and that was, well, you can see it's not good. It was getting 21 frames per second on average, well below even cinematic frame rates, which you don't even really want cinematic frame rates. It's not good when it's definitely below that. Either way, at 900p on the medium settings, yeah, it's getting 21 on average with a 1% low of 11. That's gloriously horrible. And no, I'm not going to be testing the low settings or the medium settings at 720p because that's just a bit low for this graphics card. It's a modern graphics card. Most people aren't going to be playing at 720p with it. And I'm not going to be testing 1080 or 1440p with these settings either because it just doesn't perform good at all. I mean, if it's not even running good at 900p, why would I test 1440 with it? But I could actually see somebody playing at 1440p on the very low settings, being that it did actually perform somewhat alright-ish. Not really, but at least it's better than 900p on the medium settings. Either way, my recommendation is if you have an Intel Arc A380 and you don't really care about the visuals, just throw the game onto 1080p very low and just leave it there. And if you want good visuals, just upgrade the graphics card or something, I guess, because, yeah, it doesn't really matter what you do, it's not going to be getting 30 plus FPS with nice visuals in this game, at least yet. Keep in mind, it's early access. We don't even have FSR on the game yet, only DLSS, which is only for RTX and NVIDIA graphics cards. Either way, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time.